Hello and welcome to another video lesson with Mr. Roman. Today we're going to be looking at greatest common factor. This is part one of a two-part video lesson. So here in the warm-up, we're going to see that we're trying to find the greatest common factor of the following numbers. So what we're going to do here is we're going to list out the factors for each pair of numbers. So in this case, 6 and 8. And so let's start with 6. So we would say the factors of 6 are 1 times 6, 2 times 3. And then the factors of 8 are 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. And we would say that the number that's the greatest that they both share is going to be the 2. And so we would say the greatest common factor in this case is 2. Now let's shift over to the 12 and the 20. So same thing, we're going to list out the factors of 12. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And then the factors of 20 we would say are 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. And we can see that the greatest number that they share for both lists is the 4. So here we would say the greatest common factor is 4. So on your notes, you have 3 boxes. The first one says factors, and those are numbers or variables that are multiplied together to create a term. Then in the middle, you have common factors, which are factors that 2 terms share. And then the greatest common factor would be the largest common factor between 2 or more terms. We also abbreviate that as GCF, greatest common factor. Now it says in example C, find this greatest common factor of the numbers 36, 60, and 90. If you feel confident enough, you can go ahead and do the mental math and come up with the greatest common factor without having to list the factors of each number. But for reference, I'm going to continue to list those factors for your reference. So 36, the factors are 136, 218, 312, 49, and 66. And in 60, you're going to have 160, 230, 320, 415, 512, and 610. There's a lot of factors there. And just looking at this list at a glance, so far we would say that the greatest common factor between the two is 12. But remember, we have to consider the 90 as well. So 90, you have 160, 245, 330, 518, 615, and 910. So now we would actually say that the greatest common factor between the 3 lists would be this 6. So here we're going to list it as the greatest common factor, GCF, is 6. Next, the factors of 7 and 39. 7 just has factors of 1 and 7, so 1 and itself. And the same with 39. So it has 1 and 39. So here the greatest common factor is 1. But we're going to look more closely at that because that brings us to our concept of prime numbers. So prime numbers are numbers that are only divisible by 1 and itself. So 7 and 39 both are prime numbers. And we would say that if the GCF is 1, then we just go ahead and say that this is prime. So in this case, we are going to call this a prime. There's nothing other than 1 that can be factored out of it. So now letter E, we're going to treat the numbers here and the variables as separate. So let's go ahead and list the factors of each. So 5, you'd have 1 times 5, so that's a prime number. And then x squared, you'd say x times x. And then for the 7x cubed, we'd say 1 times 7, which is also a prime number. And then x cubed, you'd say x times x times x. So here, since both terms share 2 x's here and here, then we would say the GCF is x squared. In letter F, again, we're going to list out the factors of each. So for 4xy, you could say 1 times 4, 2 times 2, and then x and y. For 8y, you could say 1 times 8, 2 times 2, and then just y. So here we know they share a common 4, and they share a common factor of y. So we would actually call this GCF 4y. Next, letter G, again, we're going to list out all the factors of each of the terms. So starting with the 32 x to the 5th y, you would say 1 times 32, 2 times 16, 4 times 8. X to the 5th, remember, is x times x times x times x times x, so 5 x's, and then just the y. With 4xy, we would say it's 1 times 4, 2 times 2, and then x and y. And then for the 16x cubed y to the fourth, we're going to say 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4, x 3 times, and then y 4 times. So we know at least, starting at the bottom, that each term shares at least one factor of y, and they share at least one factor of x. And then between the numbers, we would say that they share a factor of 4. And so we would call this the GCF of 4xy. And then lastly, with letter H, when we have negative numbers, we're just going to treat those like positive numbers. So we're going to find the greatest common factor between 45, 30, and 15. And here we've listed the factors of 45. Here we've listed the factors of 30. And then here we've listed the factors of 15. So the greatest common factor of all three of these lists is actually the 15 here. So we're going to say GCF of 15. And this concludes part 1 of the video lesson.